Hello and welcome to Grody UnPrOfEsSiOnAL. My name is Justin McMenamy, and my mission is to share both profitable and painful leadership lessons I have acquired over a 20-year career as a misfit in corporate America. In this episode, we finally cover the topics that you have been begging for. When should one use a double Windsor, and when should one use the Eldridge? Jeff Hancher, it is so good to have you as a guest on Grody UnPrOfEsSiOnAL.
Great to be here. I'm excited about it. I think I have a pretty good understanding of who might be listening today, and this is an audience I'm passionate about, so thanks for having me.
Excellent. My first question, right as we get started, is how do you prepare for a podcast called Grody UnPrOfEsSiOnAL?
Well, I mean, I got to be honest. I love it. I love the marketing because it forces you to dive in under the layer of the title of the show and figure out what am I getting into here, right? I did look at some of the past interviews, the content, the titles, and I'm like, man, I think this guy is absolutely onto something. But when I first saw the title, I said to my team, I'm like, are you sure this is the right show for us? So I had to unpack the layers there a little bit.
Absolutely. I was hoping you weren't going to come on with a suit on. That was my one thing, is if you came on with a suit, I knew we might be off to a bad start.
No, my suit days are every once in a while I have to for an audience, but I haven't thrown a tie on, Justin, in 5 years. I don't think. Maybe a funeral and a wedding here and there, but for several years I had to wear that. And now, no, not so much. I'm usually a T-shirt.
Awesome.
I'm fancy today. I got a button down on, but outside of that, I'm usually in a T-shirt.
I love it. I love it. Jeff, as I was doing some research and looking at things you've written and things you've said, you talk fairly regularly about your childhood and some of the difficulties and trials and missteps that you took early in life. If you wouldn't mind, share some of your background, share some of the Jeff Hancher origin story.
Yeah, I think it's important. We all have a story. I love telling my story. I didn't always love telling it because it's vulnerable and I guess you could say embarrassing. But now I feel like when you are vulnerable and you can tell a story, there might be one person listening that can borrow my belief in them. I don't have the worst story ever, but man, it was definitely a challenge growing up. I grew up in a very rural town in southwestern Pennsylvania. I had two very, very sick parents. They never worked a day in my life. My mom battled a disease called lupus. My dad battled chronic osteoarthritis, led to leg amputations, bone fusions. So we were a product of the system. We were a product of the state, if you will. Well, that would be bad enough, but things ended up getting even worse because through those sicknesses, now my parents are good people, so hear my heart in this, but it was very compromised, and their condition led to some substance abuse with pills, which led to rehabs, which led to me and my brother having a tremendous amount of lack of direction and dysfunction. There were times I remember in high school even that both of my parents would be away. One might be getting a surgery, one might be in rehab, trying to break off of prescription pills. And you can imagine two teenage boys with a lot of freedom, a recipe for disaster. And we made a lot of bad decisions. I had a severe problem with alcohol, probably starting even at the age of 13, 14 years old, started drinking in my bedroom. Nobody really came to my room. I would do that alone. That's not normal. Usually in high school, if you are drinking, it's to socialize. But I would be drinking alone, brushes with the law, around the wrong friend group, found myself in the back of a cop car a few times. It led to this, like, who am I becoming? What am I doing? Yeah. It's not who I wanted to be, but I was angry. I was resentful. I didn't like being poor. One of my jobs was to cut squares out of the metal coffee cans and pop rivet them to the floor of our car. One of my jobs was to fill the kerosene heater in the living room because there were many, many times we didn't have utilities. Not because they weren't available, because we never paid our bills. It was really, really tough. And through these brushes with the law and around the wrong friend groups, I was about to graduate from high school. College wasn't really a good option for me because even though I would have got a lot of funding, I couldn't even afford to pay for the books. Like, it was rough. And so I decided I just wanted out. I wanted out of here, so I joined the military and became an Army soldier. And I'd love to tell you it's because I was a patriot. Although I am very patriotic, I was running from something, not to something. But I will tell you it was the best decision that I made because it taught me that there was life out of the dysfunction. And through some tough-minded leadership and a tremendous amount of structure and a couple of drill sergeants that knocked the chip off my shoulder, I started evolving into a man and understanding what it was going to take to achieve success. And so that's kind of the nickel tour to like a sneak peek. I mean, there's not enough time in this episode for me to tell you some of the dirt and the crazy that went on in the childhood, high-speed chases. I could go down the list.
You've said before that the military saved you from becoming the person that you were headed towards. They made you into a man. They taught you self-discipline. You just alluded to it, but I wanted to ask, what were some of the components of that transformation?
It started even in high school. Before I went to the military, I was introduced to the sport of boxing. I was introduced to it because I was fighting a lot, and I was getting kicked out of school a lot. And this was a legal way to punch people, right?
It was on-the-job training.
It was on-the-job training. And so I started getting that structure from my trainer, Benny Urso, even in high school. To give you an example of that, my first time in the gym, I walk in, and he knew I was coming, right? He knew the backstory. He welcomes me to the gym. He calls over to a guy. His guy's name was John. And he said, John, I want to introduce you to Jeff. John, I want you to lay on the ground. And John, I want you to drop this 20-pound medicine ball on Jeff's stomach. Jeff, I just want you to count out loud to 20 and let me know when you're done. And I'm like, no problem. These guys aren't going to get in my head. You know, I'm a bruiser. Mm-hmm. So I get on the floor, and I'm 18, 19, 20. And I get up. I kind of, brush it off. And Benny comes over. He's like, what are you doing, son? I said, well, you told me to do 20, and I did it. He said, oh, my mistake. He said, I actually didn't want you to even start counting until you couldn't take the pain anymore. Mm-hmm. And he points at the ring, and he said, someday you're going to be in that ring, and you're either going to bleed in there or you're going to sweat here. Which would you prefer? And with that, I got back down on the ground. And I felt like, all right, I'm in an environment that I'm not in control. Somebody's calling the shots. And I took that brief season of time into the military because, man, when I landed at Fort Jackson, from day one, when you hit the ground, it was do what I say, do this, pain is your friend, and a tremendous amount of structure. I do a keynote called The State of Readiness, and a lot of it is based off of my military experience. And I talk about 3 pillars to success. And these are where I started to learn them, was in the military, and then later in my corporate career. But the first pillar is continuous improvement. Yeah. The second is accountability. And the third is engage your motivation. And the military started teaching me these 3 pillars. Now, these are Jeff Hancher's 3 pillars. There's a million out there. But when I look back on my journey, these are 3 things that stood out to me. So this accountability, even if you don't have it in the military, it's introduced to you. You will get up, you will run, you will do push-ups to muscle failure. Your socks will be folded exactly this way, put in this place. Your bunk will be made this way. You will go to the bathroom at this time, eat at this time. This is extreme accountability. Now, continuous improvement. There's a spirit of positive discontent in the military which says we're never as good as we could be. Even if you break your personal record on the 3-mile run, that's not good enough. How much faster can you be? How many more push-ups can you do without reaching muscle failure? How much further can you throw the grenade? How much better can you do on the rifle range? It's never good enough. So there's always this spirit of continuous improvement. And then engage your motivation. We knew from day one this was not about us at all as individuals. This was about a team. There's going to come a day that we're deployed and we're in the field, and we have to have one another's back. This motivation was deeper than a GI Bill, deeper than a career. Not only are you taking care of the person on your left and the person on your right, but when you get to the essence of the motivation of what we're doing, we are defending freedom. and we're helping those others in the world defend freedom that can't defend themselves. This is a deeper level of motivation. These are three things, Justin, I never felt before on that level until I went to the military, and it changed me.
Yeah. Jeff, first, thank you for your service in the U.S. Army.
Yeah.
Myself and everyone listening is indebted to both yourself and the hundreds of thousands of other men and women that sacrificed their time and sacrificed their autonomy and sacrificed their lives, some of them, for the freedoms that we have. I really appreciate that. As you transitioned out of the U.S. Army, you went to a company by the name of Cintas. And I think many of us know the brand Cintas because we see it on the trucks that drive around town and they're changing out rugs or they're changing out laundry in certain places. Talk to me about your transition from the military into civilian life and into adulthood even, and taking on a role. And I looked it up. The Uniform Route Skipper was your title that you took as you came into Cintas. Talk to me about that transition and what went into that transition.
Yeah, it was an accident, honestly. It was a big accident and the best accident ever. I did get my GI Bill, and I was about to blaze a trail. I was going to be one of the first in my lineage to have this coveted college degree. I got the GI Bill. I've been in the military. I got some money. I can afford these books. We're going to go. We're doing this. And I'm about 2 weeks away from starting this academic career, and I get the call from my dad that I had gotten many other times, which is they're sending mom home in hospice. And of course, you know, you have empathy and you're sad and all of these things. The difference this time, Justin, was this was going to be the time that my dad had to have his leg amputated. He had severe infection running through him. So he's getting his leg amputated while they're sending his wife home in hospice. So he's off doing this. They're sending mom home. I need your help, he said. And I did what anybody listening would do. Is my thought was, you know what? We'll put college on the back burner. I'll start next semester. So I go home and I get the nurses set up. My dad's getting rehabbed. And here I am. And I'm like, I just got to help pay some bills. Yeah. So as I'm taking care of all this stuff, I'm going to go get a job and just try to put some money in the family. The problem was I didn't have a ton of skill. A lot of my military skill wasn't transferable. Some of it was. But I'll tell you what, I was a hardworking country boy. I worked on a farm. I could throw a bale of hay further than anybody, right? I was a former boxer. Like, just give me the grit, give me the grind. I'm your guy. Yeah. And so I did what we did back in the day. You know, some of the younger people won't have any idea what I'm about to say. I went and bought a newspaper. And I looked for a job. That's how we did it back in the day. Like, you look through the classifieds, and I just needed to find something that they needed a strong back and a weak mind kind of job, right? And I found truck delivery, and I'm like, that's got to be me. So I applied to be a route delivery driver at this company called Cintas. I interviewed, and they said, well, we don't have an actual route open, but you can be a skipper. And a skipper meant you don't have your own route, but if somebody calls off sick, you can run their route. And I'm like, look, I'm in. And it was amazing. They paid me $400 a week. And I was like, this is unbelievable. And they had a 401k, and they had profit sharing, and they had medical benefits. And I'm like, wow, this is pretty nice.
This is how the other half lives, is what you're thinking.
I'm like, this is unbelievable. I'm able to help pay some co-pays on some prescriptions for my parents. We're no longer having to have them cut pills in half to make it to the next prescription. You know, we moved from bologna to chipped ham. I mean, life is, I'm making tracks here. Like, right. I'm contemplating not going back to college at all. I mean, how much better could it get? So I accidentally found Cintas. And it was supposed to be a seasonal job. Well, that seasonal job, that skipper, I end up getting promoted into my own route. And you think $400 a week was good. Oh, my. When I got my own route, they paid you incentives on performance. And this is going to blow your mind, Justin. I bought a new truck, a POV, a personal vehicle. I mean, I'm talking, I went to a car dealership. And I bought a cherry red, brand new, 4-wheel drive Chevy S10 truck. Now, you want to talk about a guy running around town with a little bit of swagger about him. I'm telling my parents and my new wife, life's about to get really good. I kept thinking about, I got this GI Bill, I'm going to go to night school. The problem was, in that career path that I had, I got promoted 10 times. My average was every 2.5 years I got promoted. To this day, I still don't have a college degree, and I made it to a senior leadership role in that Fortune 500 company, which quite frankly is why I'm passionate about leadership. When I went there, I didn't know what a collar stay was. I didn't know how to tie a tie. I didn't know that your belt and shoes were supposed to match. I didn't know any of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I had great leaders that saw potential in this young kid, and they helped draw it out. And I made it my business that I want to do that for other people. So that's kind of how I found Cintas.
That's the story. I love the story, and I love starting at the ground and working your way through the organization. It allows a person to continue to have humility as they move through the organization because they have walked the mile in the other person's shoes. They can remember what it is to start in an organization. A couple things that come to mind as I think about your story and your background, particularly as it pertains to leadership. One of them is what I'll call crossing the chasm. I spent time in college working in a facilities group inside of a Dow 30 company. In my career, I've worked around factories, engine factories, and production facilities. And there can be a fraternity mindset inside of the blue collar or inside of the hourly or operations, however you want to think of it. And that fraternity is that we're not management. There's an us and them. Being promoted 10 times across those 23 years, you crossed over that chasm. And as you said, your childhood was one where you weren't silver spooned, you weren't the college crowd. As you made those transitions, how did that look? Were there friends that are like, oh, Jeff, now he thinks he's something. There he goes. Oh, yeah. He's going to be one of those guys now. How did that work in your story?
Man, everything you're saying is resonating, and it's true. For me, I'm not going to speak for the masses, but for me, I just wanted to see how far we could go. How far can we take this? Now, check this out. That was in 1996 I started. There's guys that taught me the job that are still doing the job today.
Certainly.
It doesn't make them bad people. They're amazing people. Now, when I took that leap, both my friends outside of work and the people that were my peers inside of work gave me tons of resistance. My personal friends, some of them are still acquaintances, but not like it was. What I've learned about going to different levels is that not everybody's going with you. Not everybody is going to be on that journey with you. There are seasons of loneliness, I would say.
Yes.
But if you're not being stretched, you're in the wrong room. We know this. I always would just push the envelope. I've lived the last 25 years as an imposter. Why? Because every time I took a leap, I felt inadequate. That's not a bad thing. I was inadequate. I had never done it before. And when I took that leap from truck driver to my first white-collar job in the company was outside sales. And that meant you went from wearing a uniform, work pants and a work shirt, to wearing a suit and tie and shiny shoes and the nice tie with the nice Windsor knot with the dimple inside, right? So now I was too good for them. Oh, now you're too good, right? But I cared more about my motivation than I did what people said. Now, it stung, and I would kind of blow it off, and I would try to make fun in the locker room. Oh, guys, stop hating. It stung a little bit because I'm like, deep in the core of who I am, I don't forget where I came from. I don't forget what that felt like. I don't forget that environment, and it's a big part of who I am. But I'm not settling. I'm not settling there. And that's a hard ceiling for a lot of people to break through. Statistically speaking, I should not have lived past 25 years old. If you talk to a counselor and you fill out the sheet that they have you fill out, the odds of me living beyond 25 is in single-digit percentages. Wow. So now I'm just in bonus round.
You're on house money.
I'm on house money. When I got the promotion into sales, the leader that was there knew I was not coming in prepared. And this guy says, hey, we're going to take a half day. I'm going to take you to this store called Joseph A. Bank. His empathy was a 10.
Yeah.
He said, there's things that you need to know that I didn't know when I was your age. He didn't talk about my poverty. He didn't talk about my sick parents. He knew the story. He didn't say any of that. He just said, look, there's things that you need to know. And if you're open to it, I'd love to help you. And I'm like, I would love the help. So he didn't make me feel dumb and stupid.
Yeah.
He told me what a caller stay was and what their function was. I'm like, all these years, I had no idea. I remember him taking me in the bathroom mirror and showing me how to tie a tie. I remember him telling me the difference between a sport coat and a suit and why they're different and where you would wear them. He told me what business professional was and business casual, and that if you're wearing brown shoes, you should wear a brown belt. And you should never, ever wear black shoes with a blue suit or whatever the protocol was in 99 or whatever, right?
Right.
That wasn't part of any key performance indicator. It wasn't part of any sales quota that I had. It was leadership. He made deposits in me that later earned him the right to make withdrawals. And then the next leap, which was a big one, was the leap into leadership.
Yeah.
Now check this out. The people that I ended up leading, I go from white collar sales, still a white collar leader, but guess who I'm leading? The truck drivers.
Right.
I'm back into service. I go from sales back into service. And I have my first team meeting, and I'm coming in overconfident. Let's just call it what it was. I'm the new sheriff in town. I'm not going to let these guys punk me. And I'm halfway through my first meeting, Justin, and one of the guys who'd been there forever, trained me on the route, said, Hancher, you're not fooling anybody. I got socks older than you. Right. And I'm like, oh, man, here we go. Here we go. What I learned in that moment was how you deliver feedback and how you go about leading people versus managing and trying to overcompensate for lack of confidence. Whether it's blue collar, white collar, any collar, the inside of every human being is a soul that has a reason to win. And I totally missed the memo. That leap was very, very hard, but I learned by touching the stove and getting some good mentors around me. But it is a unique chasm, and a lot of people won't make the leap because they don't want to be one of them. I don't want to be one of them.
Yep.
I just want to stay here and be one of us.
That's right. One of the things I'm always fascinated to talk about is leaders that have had to learn the craft in different environments. There are things that are pervasive in leadership that don't change no matter what environment you're in. There are other nuances that change as you move from one environment to another. Having experienced the military life in the U.S. Army, the blue-collar environment and Cintas as a driver, and then the white-collar environment, the salaried environment, what are aspects of leadership? What are nuances that you've learned over the years that you apply the craft slightly differently in those environments?
Man, that's really good. I'll tell you my experience. I don't know if it's right. There's multiple authority types. You have punitive authority. You have reward authority. You have reverent authority. You have expert authority. There's a bunch of authority types. And depending on the environment, there's these norms. I'm not even saying they're right. You know, when you're in the military, especially when you're coming into the military in basic training as somebody that's not an officer, there is punitive authority that's fully in play.
Yes.
Do it because I said. And if you don't, you're going to feel pain. Punitive authority. That gets you compliance.
Yes.
That's a lot of how the military is. Until there's a place where there's true camaraderie and there's an opportunity for the leader to engage the heart and mind, which I would say, in my experience, wasn't prominent in the military. I'm not putting every military leader in a box here, but I would say it's not prominent. Now you go to the corporate world, and I got to experience blue collar, and I got to experience white collar. And again, here's a bias. The blue collar was more of the rub dirt in it, take a lap. I don't care if you're hurt, you play hurt. It was more of this maybe reward authority, where if you do a good job, I'll pay you more. When you get the white collar, it's more motivational leadership and more expert authority. I didn't belong in white collar, and it's the most uncomfortable I felt. I felt more comfortable in basic training than I did in white collar.
Right.
Because they looked away, they acted away. I felt like they were all arrogant and had big egos, and I just couldn't stand it, to be honest with you. I was way more comfortable on the service side, the blue-collar side, because that was what I was used to. That was my upbringing. Those were my quote-unquote people, right? But I will say this. There's a stark difference between earned authority and appointed authority. Stark difference. The people that are listening that aspire to lead, start acting now like the leader that you want to become. You don't need a title to influence anybody. When you are waiting on a title, what you're waiting on is appointed authority. I am the king. You will do what I say. That gets you compliance. When you find this way to cross this chasm of earned authority, you don't need a title to do that. That's how you go from being a boss that people report to becoming a leader that people don't want to let down. Now people do it because they're engaged in it and they believe in it and they believe in you and they don't want to let you down. You don't see that a lot in the military. Now, there's a camaraderie that happens. Yes. And you'll do it for the guy to your left and to your right. But here's what's common between everybody in the military, everybody in a blue-collar job, and everybody in a white-collar job. Inside everybody is a soul. Inside everybody, I believe, is a desire to improve, to make impact. How it's expressed is a lot different. You're not going to walk into a blue-collar job and get somebody all emotional and crying. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. You're not going to see that in the military. We're not going to sit around and say, tell me about your feelings. We're not doing it. It's not going to happen. But I will tell you, the leader that can dive inside of that and find out what drives people, you know, Simon Sinek told us this, right? He said, people will work for their what, but they'll die for their why. I believe that to be true.
Yeah, that's great. We talk a lot, and I've experienced this also. When you are appointed leader, it actually becomes far, far more complex to collect the information on how to improve as a leader. When you're not a leader, if anyone is following you, you know you're an inspirational leader because they have no other reason to follow you. They're following you because you have an idea worth following. The moment you become a leader, the fact that people are following is not data that you can use definitively to say, I'm a good leader. It might just be because that's where their paycheck comes from, or they're hoping to get some political capital.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, if you want to find out if you're a good leader or not, go lead in a nonprofit.
100%. The barrier to exit is so low.
That's exactly it, because you can't pay them more, because 0 plus 0 is 0. You can't fire them because they're not really an employee. They're a volunteer. You only have one recourse. You influence them.
That's right.
That's it. And that is leadership. I agree with what you said. You'll know your leadership impact the day before you get the title. As soon as you get the title, you have appointed authority and you have reward authority. With reward authority comes a lot of fake applause because you control their pay and their ability to be promoted. So everybody, how do you think I'm doing? Boss, you're amazing. Probably the best leader I've ever had. I don't even know how it could get any better. What? Come on, man. Come on.
Jeff, I want to transition to a specific topic of leadership, and one in particular that you're very passionate about, and that's feedback. Mm-hmm. This coming summer, you have a book coming out, and it's entitled Firm Feedback in a Fragile World. Mm-hmm. I'm interested to understand and know, what was your inspiration for writing on the topic of feedback specifically?
A couple of things. One, I sat through probably 15 years of succession planning meetings in my corporate job. And the whole point of these meetings were to determine who was ready to be promoted and who wasn't. And when I started my consulting business, I wanted to solve what I believed to be a big problem. But I also wanted it to be something I was passionate about. And so when I was going through these succession planning notes, I found that the number one reason that people were held back from making bigger impact was a lack of emotional intelligence. And I looked at it briefly and I thought, you know what, this is way overbaked, overplayed, not a space I want to compete in, right? Reason number two was not being effective at challenging leadership, having the tough conversation. And I remembered this. And I'm drawing all my notes of hundreds, thousands of people and the notes that we would take about their lack of doing this. And I had notes on multiple things about, well, how do we make them better? Because they're just an amazing person. Matter of fact, their results are really good too, but we just can't promote them because they're missing this thing. Well, what are we going to give them? Can we train them? Is there something? And there was never really a good answer. So during the pandemic, I spent probably a better part of 4 weeks building a framework. How do I solve this problem? And I launched our performance management workshop. This book is after that workshop. Now, how's that tied to my passion? Well, it's tied to my passion because I'm a product of feedback, literally. When I got that sales job, that leader that took me to Joseph A. Bank, that taught me how to tie a tie, that taught me what shoes to buy, he's the same leader that would pull me into the conference room after work was done and role play with me and teach me phone scripts and teach me how to effectively close a sale and how to trial close and how to feel, felt, found, and overcome an objection. And he taught me all these things. What we call these are deposits. Yeah. Deposits earn you the right to have tough conversations. Well, I'm in my rookie year. I'm doing better than expected. Matter of fact, I might make a run at President's Club. And one morning I got the call from my dad that I had gotten many times. You got to get to the hospital. It's different today. So I canceled my appointments and I went. My brother was there. My dad was there. And I'm glad I went that day because that was the day that I held my mom for the last time. It hit me, Justin, so hard because everything I was fighting so hard for, I felt like it was just gone. My motivation was gone. I didn't care about that cherry red Chevy S10 anymore. The commission checks no longer motivated me. What was the point? And I fell into this really, really dark place. And there was a day that my sales manager pulled me into the conference room and he said, enough's enough. We're done doing this. You're built for more. You have 24 hours to decide if you're going to be on this team and be the person that I know you can be or if you're not. But you're not going to continue on like this. Now, if you knew me and my background, 10 years ago, I would have just punched him and walked out. That would have been it. Here's the reason I didn't. This guy deeply cared about me.
Yeah.
And he didn't just say it. He showed it.
Yeah.
He went out of his way to see me win. Not because he needed my numbers, because he truly believed in helping people reach their potential. When he had that tough conversation with me, he earned the right to have it. And if you think, listener, if I were to ask you to put up your Mount Rushmore of leaders that have impacted your life, coaches, teachers, bosses, family members, your Mount Rushmore. If I ask you this question, were they tough on you? They were. Every one of them was tough on you. But here's the follow-up. Did they care? You know they did. When Sean brought that feedback to me that day, I didn't want to let him down. And I pulled up my bootstraps and I got back in the game. Here's the deal. My numbers were slipping. Appointed authority says, I don't care if your mom died or not. You're missing your number, and this is the law. And if you break the law, you get disciplined. He could have went that way, and he would have been within his rights to do so. But he didn't. He didn't go that way. He went through reverent authority. And he said, look, you're better than this. He could have just delivered a disciplinary form and been done with it. But he didn't. So that's my challenge to the leader listening. The best leaders don't care about who's right. They care about what's right. And they meet people where they are in a way that can transform them into something they didn't even know was possible themselves.
Yeah.
I wrote the book because, one, I think it does solve a big problem that is in leadership today. And I'm passionate about it because it's made me who I am. Yeah. I'm not that person without the tough feedback. The fragile world piece comes from the Great Resignation, pandemics, social injustice, political distress, quiet quitting costing the global economy $9 trillion, turnover rates higher than ever before. We're now going through a season of high layoffs. You say one wrong thing to anybody, they'll quit. People will go down the road for 50 cents more an hour. You try to hold people accountable to things, they'll just quit and start beating hair on the beach. We're seeing the wildest things in the workplace today. And so leaders are in this phase of feedback avoidance, especially with a peak performer. I don't want to rock the boat. They make 70% of our performance around here. You know what? We're just going to hope this gets away. And here's the crazy thing, Justin, and I know this now more as a consultant than I did even in the corporate world. This just isn't being taught. It's not being taught. Our surveys, time and time again, when we do a workshop and somebody leaves, nobody ever told me this before. Nobody ever told me. And it's not a rocket science book. It's simple concepts. But it's just not being taught to leaders, especially those that were great individual contributors that get thrust into leadership and now they have a title and they think everybody's going to do it the way they did it. And we know this. They don't. And that's the heart behind the book. We're going to equip leaders with the fundamental tools that they need to earn the right to give hard feedback. If you give hard feedback without earning the right, you are a monster. And we've had those leaders.
Yes.
It's no fun.
It's very interesting to go back to the story, and you just touched on it. The difference between the people that are on the Mount Rushmore of the best leaders you've ever experienced and the leaders that you have nightmares about, the difference is, did they care? Both of them will challenge you. Both of them will push you. Both of them will stretch you. One of them stretches you because they care about you. The worst is only stretching you for the numbers, right? If you put yourself in that exact same room after your mom passes away, if he takes the approach of, I'm the boss, you're the student, this is the number, this is the punishment, I don't care why you are who you are right now, get it together and get back on the field. He is historically one of the bottom two leaders of your entire life. That exact same situation, he takes a different approach, which is he's put deposits into your bank, taken you to Joseph A. Bank, taught you the ropes, taught you how to tie a Windsor. In that hour, he says, you can't be like this for you. Not for the organization, not for the numbers. For you, you can't be like this. And that's what puts him on Mount Rushmore. He was tough. He wasn't soft on the issue, but it was why and how he approached the situation that categorically changes the difference. I've shared this before. Grody UnPrOfEsSiOnAL, the name of the podcast, is from professional feedback that I've received. It's an ode to the worst professional feedback that I've ever been given in my career. My wife was pregnant with my youngest son, and 38 weeks of the pregnancy, all's well. The last 2 weeks of the pregnancy, there's a really concerning medical issue that emerges. She ends up in the hospital, and you go into the hospital, and as a dad, half of your family's at risk, right? You've got your newborn son that you're hoping is coming. You've got your wife, and it's just a stressful, exhausting time. By God's grace, things work out. Hudson is born, able to be delivered. Her medical issue clears up after the pregnancy. We come home from that. 2 weeks later, in the middle of the night, she's up and about, and she has a grand mal seizure. First one she's ever had in her life. She crashes headlong into the wall. I'm startled out of sleep with my wife, unconscious. You go over, and she's not breathing very well. And I mean, I truly thought the worst in that situation. Call the ambulance. You go to the hospital. We just left the hospital 2 weeks ago. We're doing MRIs looking for brain cancer. We're doing all these tests looking for these serious, serious things. And so across this 2 week period, I missed about a week and a half. This is before paternity leave, right? Paternity leave is an amazing thing. The paternity leave that I was given was, if your wife's in the hospital, you don't have to come to work. That was the paternity leave that I was given. By God's grace, in that situation, it's a treatable, it's a manageable thing. Medication has completely been able to manage the situation. Of all of the possibilities, the least concerning of all of them. So I go back into work the morning after all of this, and I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm logging into my computer, and my boss walks by at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he says, "Hey, Justin, if you get a chance, I'd like to talk to you in my office." Okay. Makes sense. It seems like we should probably catch up on emails that we missed, catch up on project status, catch up on meetings. So I sit down in his office and he says, Justin, I know it's a stressful time in your life. I know there's a lot going on right now, but I can't help but notice that you have not shaved this morning. And I want you to know that your appearance is grody and unprofessional. And I want you to know, if you need 5 extra minutes to prepare, to come to work in a professional manner, you have my permission to spend those time. The middle of a trial, the middle of tribulation, the most difficult times in life, and the approach of the leader in that either becomes a book about feedback or a podcast about feedback. One of them highlights the greatness of a leader. The other one mocks the leader by titling their podcast Grody and Unprofessional. But feedback for sure is a massive part in setting the course of a person's career and a person's life and a person's view on leadership and a person's livelihood. As a leader, you are so central in setting the course of the people's life and mentality and psychology and direction that if it is taken irreverently and unprofessionally, you can do lasting damage to people mentally and psychologically if you're not careful.
That is profound. This guy that told you grody and unprofessional, he didn't set the table and earn the right to say it. Was it true that maybe you could have looked a little more professional today? Maybe. Timing bad? Horrible. But even forget about the timing. Even if he came and said, look, we've talked about your desire to bring your best self to the table. Today's not your best self. I thought you would want to know. Now you can just leave it right there. The whole point in this is he was driving compliance, not engagement.
Yep.
And look, adversely, because we talked about this, if you're not setting clear expectations and making deposits and you're holding people accountable, void of those things, you're a jerk. Now here's the other chasm that's just as dangerous. The one that loves deeply. Pony rides, sheet cakes, the whole thing. And there's a lack of accountability. That's the passive leader that gets taken advantage of. Yeah. They're the one that when people quit them, they say, listen, I just wanted to let you know I love you, but I'm going down the road. But man, you're amazing. They're very liked. They're not respected. They're a doormat leader. In the middle is this leader that's assertive. My prayer and hope with this book is that I can pull the passive up to the middle and pull the aggressive down to the middle so that they can be effective leaders. And it's possible.
Yeah. As an employee in an environment that has really poor feedback, really poor leadership, what are ways that an employee in that environment can improve themselves, where they're getting either no feedback or arrogant feedback that's really in a rough form? What are ways that employees in that environment can continue to improve?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be plenty of times throughout all of our lives that we are void of great leadership and great culture. We have to decide in those moments. We've heard the saying, do you want to be a thermometer or a thermostat, right? A thermometer will tell you the temperature. A thermostat will change it. I come from the belief that even in adversity, you can decide, is this going to be an anchor or a propeller? We can decide. Matter of fact, you could argue that in adversity is where the biggest opportunities are. The higher the adversity, the bigger the opportunity you have to stand out. And so seize the moment is what I would tell people. Now, you're not going to get what you need to grow in an environment like that. It's impossible. But what I will tell you is this. Regardless of the environment that you're in, there's two things that can change who you become. What you consume and who you surround yourself with. You know, are we really serious about our growth? Because last I checked, the only way to grow, it's two ways, knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom comes two ways, failing or getting around people that have failed. Hence mentoring, who you surround yourself with. When I started hanging out with successful people, it was uncomfortable. But what I can tell you is, if you get around people that have been where you want to go, it will change your life. You can read a book that Tiger Woods writes on golf. Does that make you a great golfer? It doesn't. Should you read the book? Absolutely yes. But if you play 18 holes with Tiger every Sunday, are you going to be a better player? You bet you will. because you're going to see it and you're going to get it modeled out. Leadership is much better caught than it is taught.
Mm-hmm.
Who is a great dad in your community? Who's a great husband, a great wife, a great salesperson, a great leader? Who are they in your community? You already know who they are. Have you talked to them? Have you asked them for their time? Have you found ways to get in their circle and serve them? They have the answers to where you're going. Those are the two things that I would tell you have been the hallmark of any level of success that I've had.
Are there other things that you would give as advice to young leaders or aspiring leaders about creating an environment to deliver effective feedback?
Yes. When I get called into companies, it's usually because there is a hemorrhage. And I ask 3 to 5 questions to dissect the problem. And one of the questions I always ask is this: is every employee in your company getting a one-on-one debrief with a leader at a fixed time, a routine? And I will tell you 9 out of 10, the answer is no, we're not.
Yep.
If you just do that, give them time and just ask questions. Just ask questions. A question like this, Justin: why is success important to you? Imagine asking that to that big, burly, blue-collar guy.
Mm-hmm.
That would be weird, because, we're blue-collar here. Well, inside that guy is a determination to show up for something, and usually it's attached to people. It's attached to human beings.
Yeah.
You want to create a culture of feedback? Earn the right to give it. Earn the right to give feedback. When people genuinely know that you care and you can help them get somewhere, and you set clear and reasonable expectations, and you don't avoid feedback. What if they quit? What if they cry? What if they yell? What if they get mad? What if I embarrass them? What if you don't give feedback? What if Sean didn't give me feedback that day? I'm here to tell you, my life is drastically different. Our job as leaders is to help people reach their fullest potential, full stop. That's it. It's not to hit a number. It's not to hit the next KPI. It's not to hit the quarterly bonus. It's to help people reach their fullest potential. When you do that, all these other things will automatically happen. Seek to make people their best.
Yeah. As I've wrestled with leadership and learned leadership and practiced leadership and failed at leadership, one of the things that I've employed is you can earn the right to give feedback when you demonstrate the ability to receive feedback. As I've talked to leaders, they're like, well, that will take forever. That'll take forever for me to wait for feedback. And I get it through the employee opinion survey, but it's vague and it's not specific and I don't know who said it. And I've even said, like, okay, you don't have to demonstrate your ability to receive feedback from them. You need to demonstrate your ability to receive feedback, and it can have been from anyone. So there will be times now that as I introduce myself as a leader, in the introduction are the things that I am working on as a leader, feedback that I have received as a leader. For instance, one of them that I received 15 years ago from a leader that cared deeply for me. He said, Justin, when you're in a room, every person is forced to have an opinion about you. Most of them pick that they like you. Some of them pick that they don't. But within 5 minutes of you walking into a room, everyone in that room has been forced to have an opinion about you. Just slow your roll. Just give it 20 minutes where you're not fast on the wit. Just introduce yourself the same way everybody else introduces themselves. Give them time to warm up. To your previous point, if that came out of nowhere, I might have my name on my podcast, something along those lines. But because he had demonstrated his willingness, his ability to receive feedback, I was far more open to receiving feedback from him. And in the same way as a leader, now I know I'm not perfect. This is a work in progress. My goal is to be for you and for the business. Here's the environments that in my own eyes, I've seen that I'm less than perfect in. Will you be an ally to me and help me in that process? If that's in the first 15 minutes of them meeting you, you're a lot farther along the road of being able to give them feedback on how they can improve themselves, their effectiveness, the organization, the livelihood of the customer, on and on and on.
That's so profound, man. So profound. You know what I love about leaders that seek feedback is they're saying without saying it, I don't have all the answers.
Yes.
I don't have all the answers. The meeting I was in before I jumped on here, we were having a team meeting. How's the book launch going? All the stuff. And I'm asking for feedback. How can we get better? What can we do? What's different? My copywriter is like, when you put up videos, you're way too polished and way too rigid, and it makes it look unattainable for people because they're never going to talk like you, say it like you, and like we get it, and you're really good at it, and there's probably a lot of people that admire it, but there's probably a lot of people looking at it and saying, that's unattainable. You need to show maybe behind the scenes a little bit more, dirt on your face, kind of making mistakes. Well, we got plenty of that content. Like, there's plenty of that. And she's like, no, I know, I see it. And it's not, I'm not saying that's who you are. I'm saying, like, we don't want that to be your public perception. And I'm like, man, that's beautiful. That is amazing. When you do that, you have people looking out for your blind spots. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
The challenge is so many leaders, they see that as a weakness.
Correct.
I mean, look, feedback always comes from the top, right? Absolutely not. If a Navy SEAL can run a 16th of a second faster, they don't care who that feedback comes from.
Correct.
I want it because I want to be elite. And even if the feedback's good or bad, thank you. The feedback's not always going to be true. I could say your breath stinks and you're like, look, I just gargled with mouthwash. It's not me. Don't be defensive. Just say, hey, thanks for the update.
Yeah.
Take the feedback and move on. It's only going to make you better. Think about this. Everybody that's listening today, you are literally a product of the feedback you've received or the lack of feedback that you needed.
Right.
Literally. That's all of us. That's everybody.
Yep.
And as a leader, it's our duty. It's our duty to give it. And that's the mindset that I want leaders to know is like, don't overthink feedback. It's just data. So many times leaders look at feedback as good or bad. Well, if I say this, they're going to cry. That's got to be bad. If I say this, they might throw a chair. Well, that's got to be bad. Who decides if they cry or not? Not you.
Right.
They decide. When leaders look at feedback as data, it's so freeing.
Yeah.
And if we set the table the right way and we're just delivering information and we're just looking at feedback as something that we do to modify or change a behavior, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
So there's a risk of giving it. What if they quit? What if they cry? What is the cost of not giving it?
Correct. And that cost is not only to the individual that is not receiving the feedback, that cost is to the entire organization that has to adapt to the environment that is not being spoken into. There's a cost not just
true.
at the individual level of poor feedback in either direction. There's a corporate cost to poor feedback in either direction. The hardest and most final feedback moment is the termination meeting. It's the meeting where, as a leader, you're going to inform someone that as of today, you're looking for a job. The advice that I give to every leader as they go into that environment is to say, this is not a situation where you can be the hero, but this is absolutely a situation where you can behave in a way that you are not the villain. They may call you the villain. They may react as if you are the villain. But if you have prepared properly, both in the feedback that was given over the last year, over the last 6 months, over the last 90 days, if you prepare properly in how you bring empathy to the table of the conversation, professionalism to the table of the conversation, that is an environment where you can go to bed that night knowing you are not the villain of that situation. I've had situations where the employee's wife has got me on blast on Facebook and talking about this guy did this and this guy, but I was able to go to bed that night with confidence that I wasn't the villain of that situation.
Yeah, man.
It didn't feel great. I wasn't the hero.
No.
Nobody was giving me high fives and chest bumps for it.
Right
but I
on.
wasn't the villain because I had been honest, sincere, candid along the path. And that individual, just as you had said, that individual elected to either not internalize or not believe the feedback that they had received across that period of time.
And how freeing is that? It's like my role as the leader is to set clear and reasonable expectations, equip people to meet or exceed them through feedback and training. But human nature says nobody's going to do it perfect every day, so there has to be a level of accountability. We as leaders don't control willingness. We don't. Everybody's willingness is different. And if we tolerate unwillingness too far, the people that are actually working really, really hard are going to lose all confidence in you as a leader. Correct. And by the way, when you do terminate them, that sting that they're feeling, it may be the very turning point that they say, you know what, this is twice now that I got fired for that same thing. Maybe I need to turn this thing around.
You give the person an opportunity to make a change, either professionally and find an environment that fits better with their personality and their desire, or to change themselves so that they fit in the environment that they desire to be a part of. Jeff, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I feel like we could have this conversation. It could go hours and hours and hours. I love the topic of leadership. I love and believe firmly in the importance of bi-directional feedback as a part of a healthy organization that's advancing towards a goal. How can people get a hold of you? How can people find you? Where can people line up to get your book? What are the stats?
Yeah, so it's Jeff Hancher, like Jolly Rancher, but with an H, spelled that way, Hancher. The book is firmfeedbackbook.com. You can go there. You can order a single. You can order bulk, whatever you want to do. In our launch season, we are offering some bonuses. We have an interview with me. Why did I write the book? A little bit about my experience. We're also giving away for everybody that buys the book, the Leadership Playbook. This is something that I'm very passionate about. This is where I provide you practical tools for delivering feedback. I also have a podcast, comes out every Thursday, whether you want it or not, and that's called the Champion Forum Podcast.
Excellent. It's been so good to have you. I really appreciate the time. And as I was thinking about this topic, the words that came to mind is feedback matters. It can build up and it can tear down.
Well said. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Have a good one, Jeff.
You as well.
For those that wish to share praise, feedback, accolades, or large sums of money, you can reach me at justin@grody.io. For those with complaints, concerns, frustrations, or accusations, or if you consider me to possess a mind that functions at 6 guinea pig power, I'll be at the Bismarck Convention Center on August 23rd, 2044 for the Solar Eclipse Watch Party. I'll be the one in the glasses. Thanks for your time. Let's do this again soon.